But now we do have someone here to talk about the Paw Sox who probably doesn't know more. Pawtucket Mayor Don Grebien.
Well, there are a lot of people that know more.
Mayor Grebien, thank you for coming
much.
back in here. We've had you in, we've talked about the Paw Sox. Here we are, end of June. What's different? Talk to us. It looks fundamentally the same except the backstop issue. Talk to us how we came to this point.
So listen, we've been through a lot of different traveling pathways to go through it. What we had done is to get it to this point is working with Commerce RI and the City of Pawtucket and the Paw Sox organization. Is the backstopping was the concern. The language has always been there to protect the state. It was never the city's intent not to backstop, but to get everybody's comfort level, we identified some sources of revenue specific. The language is always there, so it made everybody comfortable. It made it a lot easier for the governor and Commerce RI to be on board. So we did what we had to have a plan out there to get it vetted, because it's really important to the City of Pawtucket from an economic development standpoint to get it out there, to be heard, and to have it vetted throughout the public. So we were able to do that.
So, you talk about now the backstop coming to Pawtucket.
Yeah.
You've done the economic analysis. Are there reports out there? Are there numbers that you're going to be sharing with folks moving forward, what you expect for revenue?
Yeah, so their numbers are out there. We will get 3 times that revenue over that 30-year, because everything was based on the 30-year commitment from the Paw Sox to stay there, 30-year bonding on all 3 phases of bonds. So that'll be there, and we need to really hone in and identify what those are. Clearly, I'm not looking to use any of the state dollars or that backstopping. That's the last resort, right? So everybody's going to get nervous and say, okay, what about this and how about this? We need to get out there and explain what our options are. But until we get finality, if you will, to what the numbers are and the state's commitment, it's hard for us to talk about things such as people coming in and being donors and buying a value in that. TIF financing, the nonprofit donations that come in, the write-offs that the business folks can get, and then selling rights to the development around there when we get control of that land. So those are all the type of things, and there are others that are out there, but it's hard to lock it in because we're still talking about the potential of if we've got a commitment that we're going to have the hearings, but if we have the delegation come back and vote. And that's what's so important to us. I need to, sooner rather than later, get it done, where we know what it is, one way or another. And really, I want to take the Paw Sox off the market, because that's my job, right? I want to have them there, because once we know that, then we can start with all the details. And we've got to get out there and vet that, and we need to tie that up, if you will.
So let's talk. The nuts and bolts are the same. Again, it's the $83 million park. The City of Pawtucket will contribute $15 million. What do you have to say? There's folks out there that have concerns.
Yep.
You've heard from the community groups. You've heard of the polls online. Do you think you'll be able to convince those folks who are inherently against this and have expressed opposition? Can you sway them?
I don't know. And so because, again, when we did polling as well, and the polls were out there, and depending how this plan pays for itself, right? $45 million, and again, it's kind of explaining it. So $45 million to put into it is all of the Paw Sox ownership responsibility. $45 million, all of the backstopping, all of the interest, all of that will be paid over 30 years. That is theirs, and nobody's really seemed to grasp that. We haven't maybe explained it the best we could either.
And they have said that if it's anything above and beyond that 83, that is the team's responsibility.
On the financing of the development of the ballpark, yes, right? So now you get into the $23 million and the $15 million. Mm-hmm. The state would be generating and generates $1.9 million today on the 500,000 people that come into the stadium and visit, right? Mm-hmm. There's another $2 million above that on a new stadium they would be getting. So that cushion, if you will, is still there.
Now, where's the additional 2 coming from on that 1.9?
So you'll see it when in the all the.
Sorry, can you just go back a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. Back.
Do we need chairs? Is he too tall?
No, am I good? Okay, no, sorry. You good now?
We good, Molly?
You're good.
Am I doing good to the camera too? Because I keep looking at Kate and I'm catching myself.
No,
So-
we're good. If some people are tall, sometimes they kind of get like.
So I think it's important to start here. So when we went back and you take a look at, it was going to be about $68 million to renovate McCoy, right? So if you put that in perspective. So the state and the city was going to be on the hook to bring it up to code, to bring it up to standard AAA at $68 million. Now you go $68 million versus $73 million. It's an easy business decision. Now we get the Paw Sox organization to step up $45 million. That $45 million that they are going to be putting in is going to be their responsibility, all of their commitment. State, $23 million, that's their number, that's their commitment. They will be getting $2 million in new revenue based on income tax, sales tax, the generation of the travel, the meals tax, those type of things that come into that organization. They currently get $1.9 million. It's at least $2 million in new, right? So they have 3.9 rough numbers, and it was in the study, in the economic impact study, and we have to fine tune those numbers, and it's exactly there, and those were low. That covers that. The $15 million, and the city is probably the most exposed at this, is because the $15 million bond that we're going to be doing is based on all of the economic development impacts around there, right? So the challenge becomes for us is how do we, in the first 2, 3, 5 years, if we don't have the development, how are we going to pay for that, right? And that was the state's concern, and that's why they wanted to be able to say, here's the dollars. Our goal out there is to get the TIF financing, to go out and get different donors, people who are going to be giving charitable donations. Those are the type of things, and bringing those financial people in so we don't have to use those, because I'm not going to use those dollars, for the ballpark. It's about getting that value in there. And then it's educating people. And hopefully as we educate people, we will start changing some of those minds, because we did a poll out there, and we started saying that I got off. We did a poll out there, and when you look at this proposal and the ballpark paying for itself, and it does, all the revenue going to be generated around this ballpark will pay for it. At the end of the day, it went up to 68% in favor. And so we've done all of those polls. Fleming did a poll for us, Joe Fleming, and went out there. And so those numbers are there. It's how you present it and really educate people to understand that. And it's got to be a transparent process.
So let's go back a little bit to that $15 million. You talk about the TIF financing or potential for donors. Now, again, here we are in June.
Yep.
If they go back into session in the fall, where you have a more concrete plan to present to Pawtucket, to present to the state, to say, here's where we anticipate getting this money from.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. It's still going to be hard to say, okay, it's donor A and donor B, because there's a lot of what ifs. What if the state and the General Assembly approve it? What if this? So it's hard. That's why it's so important to lock this down and get the Paw Sox off the market. Having said that, we need to have our ideas out there, as many as we can, and we know the naysayers. We're not rocket scientists. You hear it out there. People are concerned, and rightfully so. They compare it to the 38 studios. It's not. You think about this. You've got a AAA franchise, right? There are 60 AAA and Major League Ball teams in America, right? Think about that. That are there. We're one of those 60. People also have to value the fact that what are we going to lose, right? We're going to lose dollars if they were to go. We're going to lose that goodwill and that value that we have, right? There's a value of hearing Pawtucket Red Sox out there. There's a value to all of that, but it's hard to quantify that. And that's what we need to do over the next couple of months. So that way there, when the General Assembly has their finance guy, that we need to be a little more specific on it. But again, it's hard because we're sitting there the cart before the horse, and that's the challenge. So.
Now, I was looking at some info that was put out there. Would there be assessments on ticket sales?
Part of the proposal and accepted was they would put I think it was a 50-cent surcharge on the special seating, not the average seating. There's going to be commitment because
they made the commitment of not raising the ticket prices.
Correct.
So that was my question, where the surcharge comes from.
So it's going to go into the box seats and those
Okay.
type of things. But we have to define that again, because in the legislation, and that's been the challenge, is there was no reason to define it if we weren't out there having legislation. So now it's out there, and we need to get the specifics out to folks.
And let's talk a little bit, we've done the numbers, you've seen them as well. Ballparks in the same league as the Paw Sox that have gone through renovations haven't seen the increase in attendance and have actually seen diminished numbers. Do you have concerns about attendance?
There's always that concern when you look at that. But when you start to look at, there is an increase. AAA ball teams are inclining. Their what do I try to say? Their attendance is increasing, right? There's that balance. So when you look at the average, it does come down, but you look at some of those, it does come back. So that's always a concern. So you want to make sure that you're balancing, right? Because we know what we have, we know it's going to increase, and then at what point does it plateau? The studies we've done, the economic impact studies, there's all different numbers. We want to get the people that are in the room so we all buy into if it's an increase of 1 million people, if it's an increase of 500,000, we want to get, there's never going to be consensus, right? A true consensus, but we want to do the best we can. So I'm not worried about that because they currently, And I want people to put this into perspective. They currently collect $1.9 million, the state and the city collectively, right? And most of it goes to the state. The city, again, is exposed more. But it's 1.9. That $1.9 million that they collect could pay for all of this, right? All of the city and the states collectively. But we're trying to make sure that we do it on and above on new revenue.
And speaking of new opportunities, it's been talked about to have year-round usage of a bulb. Who have you been talking with about year-round usage? When it was here in Providence, late Jim Skeffington talked about brown football. Who would be those users of something year-round, and what are those conversations about?
So there's not, and it's been hard again because we don't have, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but we don't have anything concrete, right? So it's hard. But you talk about concerts. You already see, even with the change of ownership, and Mike Timboro, who's still there, and Lou Schweckheimer, who was there and is on his own, and also the late Ben Mondor. They had a business model. They had a baseball model. This organization has done more. So you see it like, they've got wrestling coming in. They have a concert coming in. They're doing stuff with the Pawtucket Arts Festival with a beer venue, right? Because, we've got the commuter rail and we've got the Isle Brewers and we're excited about that. They're trying to do that with the food trucks, right? So they're doing those type of venues. So you're going to see that year round. So you talk about ice skating. You're talking about winter uses. The one thing that Larry Lucchino, and I've said this 100 times, whether people like him or not, and sometimes he's a little tough individual, and I was boxing with him at the beginning, but I have a much more respect because once you get to know him, he does do development well. You look at, and he does do community development. So he was smart enough to look at Pawtucket and say, okay, Slater Mill is an opportunity. We have the national park. How do I build that more? So you look at those traditions. We can do more of those things. Again, everybody goes concerts. It's school venues. They're already doing more with the schools. It becomes that. What is the market for it? And what's the area around that? So now you've got the brewery and those things tied in.
And if there was, we're to move forward, tearing down McCoy, how much would that cost?
That's what we need to start talking about, because we're not sure that we need to tear down McCoy. We have to figure out what that next use is, right? So is it school? Do we tie it in? We've talked about on that, on the show previously, we talked about, can we get a higher and best use for our high school? Can we do that as a governmental center? Do we use it for another, can soccer fit into that? What are the uses? So we're not sure that we have to. It might be a lesser use. There are some parts of it that have to come down because there are leaks and those type of things, so we do have to look at that. So it's about doing that analysis. In all honesty, we haven't got to it yet, but what can we build there? I mean, we hear all the horror stories about it being, cement being poured into the swamp and those type of things. So we've got to do those economic impact studies on there and see, the environmental impact on there and do those type of things. But I can, as the mayor, go out and spend so much money on all of these things if we don't have certain things. If we were certain they were staying and we were certain we were moving them over there, then you want to start going out, because I want to be careful of all of the ratepayers or the taxpayers that I represent in their resources as well. So it's always that challenge and that balance, Kate.
And one of those you talk about tearing down McCoy, but again, looking at the Apex site, which we know has environmental concerns, is that incorporated in that $83 million? What if they get in there and say, this is going to cost more? Is that on the Pawtucket's ownership?
So that's what we need to start looking at as well. So we think that the environmental impact is very low. Everything that we've seen from DEM, and we've sent, our attorneys have pulled out from the court records, everything that they've told us is it's minimal. There's concern about like what we have in our backyard. I forgot what the chemicals are. However, they would also hear though, and you see that there's the previous ownership and the current ownership who are fighting about environmental, right?
Which we've written about.
Right, and that,
how does that play into it?
See, we don't know what the true issues are. We think that all attorneys who are at the table and our environmental specialists are saying that it's minimal, that this is more about them jockeying about their position. So we're looking at those things as well. We do have our environmental attorneys that are working on that. So we think it's minimal. But having said that, that's why the city was on the hook for 10 to 15 million is where we're going for, because we believe that the property itself, appraised value, in its current condition, everything we've done, is just under 10 million.
Okay.
The land value is really only worth about 8 million, so we're saying between that 8 and 10 million is what we would be talking with and are talking with the ownership. Now, if you become the environmental, there are numbers in there, but we don't know how high that's going to be.
So here we are, it's Thursday, things are going fast and furious up at the State House right now, too fast. We have seen the speaker say, fall session, but what are you hearing on the Senate side?
Senate side has told us that they, Bill Conley, Senator Conley, who is spearheading this chairman, is saying that they're going to be doing the Finance Committee hearing. It needs to happen. I mean, we've got to this far. I'm the eternal optimist, and sitting there going, but it needs to happen. We need to get them off one way or another, because right now it's going to be hard for me to leverage them to continue to stay if there's nothing on the table. And again, it's got to be fair. I'm not trying to push it. I always say to people, you want to get it vetted. People have to be heard, but we need to get this done because it's far too long. We need to get them off the market.
So if there is a fall session,
yep.
What do you expect your summer? How much of your summer will the Paw Sox absorb?
The Paw Sox have absorbed a lot of our time and a lot of our energy and a lot of yours as well, right?
Yes,
it's good. No, and it's good stuff because it's so important. It becomes more than just the Paw Sox. It becomes about the economic viability of our city. It becomes that tool or that piece of that puzzle. So it has that value, right? It's not just the Paw Sox, it's about everybody else committing. We have the 2020 committee. So it's going to take a lot of our time, a lot of our resources. But for the better good of Pawtucket and the long-term viability of it and economic impact, it's worth every dime.
Last time around, let's go back to 15.
Yep.
They went around the state. There was sort of the listening tour. Is that necessary at this point? Or if this is moving forward, is it more of, again, as you said, educating the public and sort of moving forward with the plan at hand?
I think part of it, Kate, is you have to educate, right? So people understand what the true numbers are, what the true commitments are, right? That's part of it. But you also have to get feedback, right? The last thing that I want to do is frustrate the people in general, right? To sit there and say, I don't buy in and I don't trust it. Or the last thing we want to do is have the governor, speaker, and Senate president and our colleagues feeling like they haven't had input in it, right? We've done our job with Commerce RI, we've teed it up, and now we want input as much as education.
What do you say if it comes the fall session, and as we said, we know there's naysayers out there, if
Yep.
they storm the State House, if there's sort of that overwhelming sort of opposition, you're going to continue to educate, and you said you've done the polls, you've changed sort of the language and how it's presented. But what happens in that case if people really take up the mantle with this kind of once again?
And that's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't think it's as big as people think. There are naysayers out there. There's always going to be there. And I respect them. I mean, my job is to balance through that. One person you have out here is Dave Norton, who every issue is important to him, and he takes the negative side on every issue. And it's unfortunate. But it's to bring those people in, to have them sit down. I may never change their mind, but at least we've done the value and educated them as to what it truly is, as opposed to them out saying what it really isn't.
So, here I am, we're talking about how much the oxygen that Paw Sox are going to take up. I get the mayor of Pawtucket, and what else should folks know is going on in the city?
Listen, we're excited. I mean, we want to enjoy the summer a little bit, enjoy the nice weather, enjoy the Rhode Island, right? Having said that, we've got a lot of good things. So the commuter rail, which is moving, it's just a DOT, or on DOT having some conversations about that and our project with our arts bridges and how that's moving forward. So, government does take some time, but you got the Isle Brewers, and then I want to plug the guys. They've done a great job. We've got all
we had them in.
Oh, great. And they're awesome. So there's an exciting, they've got a venue down there, you've got Foolproof, and you've got so many other things. The breweries are what's happening. We've got some great artists. We've got the Hope Artiste Village, which a lot of things are happening. So there are a lot of good things. And it's little pieces of the puzzle. The market's raising in Pawtucket, the housing market, we're seeing a lot of sales. So we're investing in our schools, and we're doing it, but it does take too much time. And so it is a slow process. But
And as you said, Paw Sox will take up a lot of the time if it moves forward to a fall session. But here we are the week before the 4th. I'm asking all the guests when they come in,
Yep.
What are you doing for the holiday?
That's a good question. I will be at McCoy on the 3rd because that's the Pawtucket Fireworks Committee, and we have that out there on the 3rd of July, and that's a big event for Pawtucket. We don't have the parades. That's our big event. On the 4th, I really don't know. It depends how late I'm out on the 3rd and what I might do, and how hot it is. As I'm sweating here, going, I might be in the air conditioning.
Will you buy fireworks?
No, I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, and in all honesty, we're above the fireworks. We enjoy watching them, so we're trying to do as much family time because, as you said, the job and the Paw Sox take away that a lot of time. So it's more family time of what we're going to do.
So how many games total how many days total will there be fireworks this summer? Because it's just not the 4th.
So we have the 3rd of July is the big one for the Pawtucket Fireworks. The city's involved, and they do the fundraising. We have a nonprofit group out there that's very focused. They've done 12 total, including that. It might be 13, including that, but there were 12 Saturdays.
Okay.
They were doing all their home games, and they have a couple of home games. I think they're home Sunday as well. So they're doing that Sunday night, I think. I'm not sure of the schedule. schedule. I should probably know. I spent enough time there. I should know. But I do know Monday.
Do you have a bed there?
And Tuesday. No, not yet. So I should, but not yet.
Now in the offices. Well, plenty on your plate. Just wanted to get you in here today, as again, folks are focusing on this. Anything else folks should know before we
No,
let you
I
go?
mean, and I want everybody out there to keep an open mind. This is so important on the economic development outside of Pawtucket. You know, our business community, our residents are thriving for it. We want to be able to have our chance. And I say it's bigger than Pawtucket because it is so much value to the Blackstone Valley, and making sure that people give that the chance and come out and vet it. So that's what we're going to be doing, you know, probably middle, end of July after everybody gets through the holiday, and start focusing on letting people be vetted, you know, have it out there and hear input. And, you know, if we have to tweak certain things, tweak them. But clearly this is important to Pawtucket, and it's our time, and we want to do our thing. So.
Well, I appreciate your coming in today. I know you have a busy schedule, so
Thank
always
you.
good to have you here in studio. Bring it right to the viewers. So, Mayor Don Grebien, I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Kate.
I'll
It's a pleasure.
leave you around the corner.
Thank you.
Okay, all Paw Sox all the time. Mayor Don Grebien coming back into the Go Local studios. He has been here before, as they're trying once again to get legislation at the State House to move the ball forward, so to speak, with the Pawtucket Red Sox looking to move to the Apex location in Pawtucket. Looking potentially like a fall session now. We did have folks who have concerns. We had some community leaders reach out to us with their concerns about this. Again, very similar deal to what we looked at last time. Now Pawtucket would backstop again the bonds, and the mayor is making the case for how much revenue they expect. If this goes to a fall session, I think we do expect to ask for and see more numbers clearly moving forward. He's made the point that he has to, again, sell this to the public, again, if there's a fall session, to make the point that, as he said, this is important, in his opinion, to the economic development of Pawtucket. So, again, keeping all eyes on the